Oh man, this game's amazing.
That bodes well.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Oh, yeah, right. Definitely the sequel to Drake's Deception. Like a regular Barracuda, but only more acidic. What's up, everybody? Today we're looking at Uncharted 4: A Thief's End on the PS4. First off, graphics. Of course, the Uncharted series has always had top-notch graphics, and boy howdy, Naughty Dog kills it on the PS4. For whatever reason, they included motion blur as a default in the settings. Luckily, once you turn it off, the game looks stunning. This decision to include motion blur made about as much sense as buying a brand new car and then covering it in house paint. What were they thinking? Now, for sound design, the cars, boats, guns, voice acting, and explosive mummies all sound realistic. Not that I know what an exploding mummy sounds like, but I believe it. Oh, and the small talk between mercenaries almost makes me feel bad for killing them. Almost. The climbing segments are similar to the last games, but now they've included a grappling hook and a baton. It's a nice change from the original trilogy, but the combat is where it's at. The controls feel tight, and combined with the sound design, it just takes the firefights to a whole new level. It's so good, it makes the climbing segments kind of boring.
I hope we're done sliding for a while. My ass is full of gravel.
With this being an Uncharted game, it's mostly linear, but to mix things up, they included a couple of areas which open up exploration mechanics. I personally love the island area with the sunken ship.
Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
Also, the game's length is perfect. It ranges from 11 to 14 hours, but you can speedrun it under 6 hours if you skip all the cutscenes. I ran it in about 5.5. In terms of difficulty, when you fail, you can't help but feel like the game was mostly fair in handing you your ass. Keep in mind, that's actually pretty rare. I personally died more from the climbing segments than the actual enemies. Stupid gravity.
Long about now, I bet that boy wishes he had a parachute.
I really enjoyed the nostalgia Naughty Dog included from the first 3 games. We get to see all the treasures in Nate and Elena's attic, but my favorite throwback was when Elena tells Nate he has a funny idea of romantic, which is right out of the ending of the first game. The enemies don't have a ton of variety in A Thief's End, but they're smart. They try to flank you, work the terrain to their advantage, and they are generally pretty intelligent. I like how they brought back the brute enemy with the machine gun this time around. It really makes the last quarter of the game more exciting. Oh, and we gotta talk about that convoy sequence included around the halfway point. It's gotta be one of my favorite points in the entire series. You can jump from vehicle to vehicle, in the end you're almost ran over by an armored SUV. I guess it's kinda like getting laid while camping. It's intense.
Haha! Dangly parts.
Thank God the bonus menu's back. It's almost everything I wanted. Rest in peace, Donut Drake. Really, I wish the devs didn't play it as safe as they did in this case. I mean, they didn't even include a bikini skin for Sully.
That's why I'm here.
Jokes aside, I wish the weapon select had all of the guns. I'm basically referring to the Dushka heavy machine gun.
And this is for shooting down police helicopters.
Oh, I don't need anything like that. Yet.
Overall, the guns are great in A Thief's End. You'll see a lot of the same weapons we used previously with a few new ones. They definitely tanked the AK-47's rate of fire and boosted the ARX-160s to give the game a false sense of progression. In the real world, these two guns would have a rate of fire that differs by about 100 rounds per minute, but I guess there's no point in being particular about realism. I mean, thank God pirates didn't employ engineers and build elaborate machines in the late 1600s. That would have been a dumb plot premise. Yeah, okay, let's talk about the plot without spoilers. The first thing I want to talk about is when comparing this plot to the previous game, it doesn't add up. When we look at the sections where he plays a young Nathan Drake in this game, it appears to be in New York. So how the hell does a young Nathan Drake get to Columbia in the previous game? I just don't think it works. Now, don't get me wrong, I really enjoy A Thief's End, but compared to the third game, it still has us jump around from locale to locale, but it actually makes sense this time. The one thing I have to really hold against A Thief's End is that both me and my wife figured out the twist before it even happened, which, to be honest, was kinda lame. Now, looking at the plot at a high level, it's about finding Henry Avery's pirate treasure before the villain can find it with his mercenary army. Yes, it is a cliche plot, which is similar to the other games, but this time the villain is a bit better than usual. A nice addition is the introduction of Sam, who is Nathan's brother. I guess you might say the game is about two brothers.
It's in theaters now, coming this summer. The moon, it comes crashing into Earth. And what do you do then? It's two brothers and
I would heavily argue this game would be the perfect way to end the series, but there's rumors Uncharted 5 is in development, so that probably won't be the case. Okay, let's jump into spoilers. Please jump to the timestamp above to avoid spoilers. We open to a boat chase in the Indian Ocean with an immediate introduction to Sam. We pilot a boat towards a jagged island, and let's just say everything goes swimmingly.
Oh shit!
Surprise, motherfucker!
We then cut to Nate and Sam breaking out of an orphanage roughly 30 years earlier. When looking at the writing of Uncharted 4, I really enjoy that a lot of effort was put into making Sam feel like a familiar face, despite being brand new. When the two escape the orphanage, we get a sense of unwavering trust between Nate and Sam. The story then jumps to the early 2000s, where we see Nate and Sam have been incarcerated in a Panamanian jail to locate the first clue to Avery's treasure. We also get introduced to Rafe, who at this point is the story's financier to locate the treasure. I really enjoy Rafe's actor, but I wish he was written better as a villain. He just feels unrelatable and kind of one-dimensional. Compared to past villains, Rafe lands in second place in my books, and his character decays very quickly when he comes upon the $400 million in treasure. Moving on, Nate is escorted by the prison's warden to the rumored location of the first clue. We make our way to the top of an old tower and locate a broken cross. We return to the warden and tell him we came up empty-handed. Later we have a brawl with the other prisoners, and the cross is found, and the warden is pissed with Nate's lie. After agreeing to give the warden 25% of the treasure, he is stabbed by Rafe, and the three try to escape.
Jail's not so bad. Of course, it's shank or be shank.
Unfortunately, Sam is shot and falls to what we think is his death. The plot then flashes forward 15 years to Nate and Elena living a normal life. We get a brief glance of how their relationship has developed, and now they're a healthy couple. Really though, the thing that matters the most is Crash Bandicoot.
What? Is that it?
That's what she said.
Later we see Nate working in his office to have Sam show up. A shocked Nate rejoices and the two catch up. We learn how Sam broke out of prison, and goddamn the sequence to his escape is fun. The setup, the firefights, and the ending where Sam has to pony up the treasure in 3 months or else he'll be hunted down by a cartel. Maybe that last part's a bit dark, but the rest was great. Anyways, we cut back to present day, and Nate reluctantly agrees to go on a worldwide adventure to save his brother. In a completely moronic move, he lies to Elena about where he's going to create drama down the road. I mean, yeah, we get it. He wants to protect his wife, but she's a veteran, and she's been on every adventure so far. She clearly knows how to take care of herself. It just doesn't fit with the rest of the series. Anyways, we then travel to Italy, Scotland, and Madagascar to find clues about the treasure. Over and over, we find crazy contraptions and complex buildings, and the same excuse is blurted out. Oh, Avery must have had the world's best engineers to build this. No, just no. Maybe if he captured ruins of a long-lost civilization, I would believe you, but I don't think pirates were into recruiting construction professionals in the 1700s. It just made more sense in previous games. Oh, and we also run into Rafe and his mercenary commander sidekick Nadine every step of the way. I mean, of course, what else are we going to shoot at? After the convoy scene I mentioned earlier concludes, we run into Elena, who is, needless to say, a bit pissed at Nate for lying about finding Avery's treasure and putting himself in danger. So we have a bit of a dilemma, and Nate makes the choice to follow through and save his brother, while at the same time probably losing his wife. Nate and Sam then set off in a boat, and we come full circle to the crash at the beginning where the two brothers wash ashore on the spooky pirate island. As soon as we wake up, Naughty Dog goes back to the landmark in the distance mechanic with a nearby mountain. This time, I like how they used a landmark as it was clever. They clearly draw attention to the mountain, but they don't foreshadow the treasure is hidden underneath said mountain. Anyways, we explore for a bit, reunite with Sam, find the ruins of Libertalia, and conclude a civil war must have destroyed the pirate colony. I love the design of Libertalia. They put so much work into the detailing of the destroyed buildings. They included a brief section where Nate and Sam sit down and reflect on the ruins, as well as their journey so far. It almost makes up for his lies. Sad to say it, but the two are captured by Rafe, and he reveals he freed Sam to put him back on the trail of the treasure. There was no prison break, and there is no cartel threatening Sam's life for the treasure. Brother of the year, ladies and gentlemen. Right, what happens next? Nate falls to his death. Just kidding. Nate falls from the cliff and is later rescued by Elena. We then flash back to a young Nate and Sam breaking into a house to recover their mother's journal on Captain Avery. Fun fact, Nate will always go haywire when you go to open this one vent. No idea why, but it was consistent on both playthroughs. After exploring the house, they find the notebook with the introduction of their mother's mentor. The two brothers get to learn a bit more about their family's past and get let off the hook for breaking into her house. Of course, the old woman croaks just as they go to leave, which makes things a bit awkward with the police arriving. My only advice from this scene would be that if you're running from the law, don't yell out your buddy's name.
God damn it, Nathan, over here!
Luckily, they somehow manage to escape, but are forced to change their last names as they cannot go back to their old lives. Sam proposes the last name Drake to honor their mother, who believes Sir Francis Drake had heirs. We then return to Nate and Elena, who start working towards rescuing Sam. During their travels, we see the most realistic relationship the series has ever portrayed. The last elevator scene where Nate apologizes feels heartfelt. It really makes it easy to believe that Elena and Nate deserve a happy ending. The two move on, and we arrive at New Devon, which is where the pirate captains of Libertalia live like kings. During the Civil War, they flooded the area, which makes for a pretty interesting obstacle. We also find the remains of the poison captains, with exception to Avery and his right-hand man, Thomas II. As cool as this was, I kept on thinking there was going to be some sort of cool twist throughout the last quarter of the game, like the possessed soldiers in 3 or the guardians in 2, but I'm sad to say the plot of A Thief's End is rather bland. It's good to see something different, but it's unfortunate as it makes for a less exciting outcome. Anyway, the plot advances, and Nate and Elena rescue Sam. Just before they can abandon their quest and leave the island, Sam is separated and moves to claim the treasure. Nate then goes after Sam, and we arrive at our finale. We find Captain Avery's ship, search for Sam, and locate the skeletons of Captain Avery and Thomas too, who murdered each other during a final struggle for the treasure. In parallel to this, Nate ends up dueling Rafe using cutlasses. For a final boss battle, this was okay. I know some people think it was a bit anticlimactic, but I enjoyed the symbolism of Rafe losing control and the ship burning around them as they fought to the death. Bonus points for the finishing move.
I think he's dead.
Nate then fires off a cannon and frees Sam from a beam. The two then swim to safety, and the main game comes to a close. Now that would have been an okay ending, but hands down the epilogue is probably one of my favorites I've ever seen. First off, we get to play as Nate and Elena's daughter. Second, we get to see how the family lives in paradise. Third, they now have a dog. And lastly, we get to see their daughter going through Nate's treasure and getting caught by her parents. When they try to explain the events of the first game, she simply doesn't believe them. Just for the love of God, don't do a 5th game with Nathan. This is the ending he deserves. So, in summary, the gameplay, visuals, sound design, and acting are all top-notch in Uncharted 4. I think the only thing I wasn't huge on was the final boss and maybe a few choices the writers went with. Even then, I'm gonna give Uncharted 4 an A. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate you watching until the end of the video. And lastly, but most importantly, I hope you all have a great day. Does Neil Druckmann have a thing for buff women? Like, I'm not one to judge, but boy, Nadine is buff. I'm sure this will be a one-time thing.